Hi, I'm Keith Willis, and I am the host of Inside Pharma Leadership. And today, we are joined by Shahid Rashid, the head of product at Oncoustics, a company developing AI-enabled diagnostic technology aimed at improving early disease detection. Shahid brings more than 20 years of experience building and delivering technology solutions across healthcare and enterprise software. His career spans product management, strategy, engineering, business development, and customer success, always focusing on translating innovation into solutions that solve real customer problems. Welcome, Shahid.
Hi, Keith. Thank you for that kind introduction.
Sure. So, tell me a little bit, I guess, about your background and how you got to this point in your career.
Sure. I have been in healthcare technology for over a dozen years. My original background is as an engineer. I've spent over 20 years up and down Silicon Valley. But a few years into my career, I was trying to find an application that excited me. And as I looked at things that were interesting to me and where there were interesting problems still to be solved, healthcare it became a big appeal in terms of being able to help patients, to help clinicians, and to make a difference. Um, uh, Most of my experience has been in startups. I'm interested in the innovation side, so working with early technology and business development. What got me into Oncoustics in terms of diagnostics is that during COVID, I worked with the NIH RADx project, where I was part of a team that deployed over $1 billion to help accelerate the development of COVID diagnostics.
Okay. That must have been fascinating.
It was a really good experience. We did a lot of real good work real quickly.
Yeah, I know it kind of broke the mold and everything. How was that experience relatively to what you're doing on acoustics?
The there's two aspects to the Radix experience. The first aspect was doing a lot of due diligence on ideas that were coming to us. As a team overall, Radix interviewed hundreds of companies or even labs that were producing ideas, and we evaluated those. So that was a little bit of a unique experience compared to Acoustics. But from there, what we did was we took the ideas that we liked, helped them scale, right? We helped them build out their technology, help them build out their delivery platforms, and that's very similar to my experience at Acoustics and my experience in startups.
So, I guess as you move from FDA submission to commercialization, where do you see the greatest execution risk?
Where do we see the greatest execution risk in moving from being an R&D focused company, which we are now, to being a commercial company? We're working on some of those aspects, right at the start, right? I'll say, from the acoustics perspective, we're already deployed in over a dozen sites globally. We have letters of intent before clearance from a number of clinics and partners. And as part of going through our clearance, we're of course getting our technology approved by the FDA in addition to our own due diligence. What's the biggest risk, really, as I look at this background, as we move to the next phase, is how do we adapt to new signals as they come in? So we have a commercialization plan, we have a product plan, we have a research plan. But as we get more new information from our expanding set of customers, as the regulatory landscape changes, as we decide which new solutions we want to adopt, how do we adapt quickly to those? So that's our biggest risk is how do we take in new information and move the organization accordingly.
Yeah, I'd say in the last few years, there have been a lot more diagnostic tools. I mean, generally, when we think about things going to the FDA, we think about products as in drugs you take versus being an actual diagnostic. So that must be a fascinating lane to be in because it is the new frontier.
It really is interesting, and we're particularly software as a medical device. We're just a software solution on top of an already cleared piece of hardware. I should actually show what we're working on here. This is not produced by us. This is produced by Clarius, but this is
Okay.
a few $1,000s, and we take this device, a handheld ultrasound scanner, and make it as powerful as $1 million machine, leveraging the power of deep learning. So we're very
Okay.
excited about it.
Oh, that's cool. That's really, and it's very small. I mean, I know a lot of companies have been doing scanners and those type of things, but that looks like a pretty impressive piece of technology.
We are, we work in close partnership with this company, Clarius, out of Vancouver. And we've had, some of obviously it's easy for a doctor just to keep in their pocket or a clinician just to keep in their pocket and move from room to room. But also it brings up applications like supporting the First Nations in remote locations in Canada. We've had a clinician use this in a study in rural Guatemala. So
Wow.
we're excited about those new applications as well.
Well, that's good. That should be a game changer, you know.
We believe so.
I bet you do. Where would you say that startups most often underestimate the complexity of scaling from innovation to disciplined commercial execution?
Okay. That's. I think this is a large startup problem. Something that Silicon Valley itself talks about a lot. I would, and there's obviously various stage of startup development, but the one I want to focus on is really going from a proof of concept to going to commercial scale. Right. Those it's two different mindsets. So, and from our perspective, this is. Moving from an R&D and science focused organization to really being a product for multiple users. And the way we go about this is by continually listening to our market, right, and to our customers, to our clinicians who are using the solution, paying attention to this. But this is just a challenge overall. How do you move from being where your core focus is R&D to being customer success? How do you move from, hey, I know a few people who want my solution to, hey, we want to get this out to thousands of people?
Yeah.
From also just very simply is a customer calls in, on a small issue or a large issue, those come to me. I pick up the phone, but at some point you want to scale that out so you can support them more quickly and in a better way.
Yeah, I would imagine there's a lot of decisions that need to be made. A lot of organizations are, I would say, have smaller footprints. Back in the day, there'd be huge sales forces. You'd have medical, you'd have a lot of people doing a lot of stuff before actual approval, and then you would have this huge launch. Those days are gone where you think about how do we go to market with a smaller footprint but have the same type of success as larger launches used to have.
Sorry. So in terms of how we prepare for that, in terms of launch readiness, right? Our big thing is that as a core thing, we want to make sure we're providing a solution that's valuable and safe for our customers to use. So that's our primary core focus. So we spend a lot of time as in traditional companies speaking with our customers, understanding what they need, giving them early versions of under the appropriate regulatory framework so that we can get feedback on that. Then we are also going through the whole process of the FDA. We're also running it by our own medical experts and others, and we have our own internal metrics. So the core thing we want to make sure is that the solution is complete and ready. And that's very important in the medical space, as I think everyone that's
Yeah,
hopefully listening to this
absolutely.
podcast is aware of. The other part that's important as we prepare for a launch is that we're ready to listen to our customers as these items go out, right? So even if, launch to commercialization is different than launch, right? Launch means this is ready for a customer to use. Commercialization is perhaps scaling that. But from a launch perspective, we also want to make sure that we have our customers enable so they can actually use the device in an easy way, right? So that there's appropriate training. If they need support, we have regular check-ins with them. And there's also an open line for that they know that they can come out and reach us. So those are the most important things as we think about launch itself. Commercialization, we can maybe get into later in this discussion.
Yeah. A lot of steps, a lot of things that have to be done. And then I would imagine also it's kind of the pacing because you can't bring everybody on at the same time. You kind of, this kind of stepwise approach that's very important. Would you say there are differences between using a diagnostic tool versus a traditional product? What's been your experience so far as the differences in launching and commercialization or thoughts about that?
So I think maybe the first thing that there's probably a few points here. The first point, maybe I'll speak to there is, we are an AI enabled solution. AI means, or it is deployed in many different ways. What we do is we focused on is making this a very simple solution. So when a clinician looks at the output from our device, it's on a scale that they already understand. It's exactly the same as the predicate which we are validating against. So from the clinician's perspective, there is no AI in the loop that they have to be aware of. It's being able to, take some scans with this device. We do have to do a little bit of training on the motion of this because they're using a different type of probe. But then in terms of interpreting the output and understanding everything, that's meant to be seamless for them. So that's a very important aspect that we've thought about in our design is how do we make the clinician experience as close to what they're already doing as is.
Okay. Now, is there any specific disease state, or is it pretty much doctor has an idea of how they're going to use this tool from a
So
diagnostic standpoint?
we're focused on detecting fibrosis and cirrhosis of the liver.
Okay.
So what we do is we're meant to be triage essentially in primary care, so that people can get routed to the appropriate care earlier in the process, right?
Okay.
Click theory also applies in the healthcare space. The more referrals you need, the longer it takes, and more people will drop out in terms of getting the appropriate treatment. So if we can provide the initial diagnosis well early on, then people can get routed quickly and efficiently to the places they need. And in terms of doing that primary diagnosis, in terms of telling someone whether your liver is healthy, somewhat unhealthy, or very unhealthy, we do provide that as a basic reading or we intend to provide that as our basic reading once our product is cleared.
Yeah, that's big because with the shortage of physicians, especially with specialists, it's harder to get in, and being able to diagnose patients earlier, it's a big thing to know that if you need to send a patient off, because sometimes patients are unaware until they're sick, and then they're looking for a referral, and by then oftentimes it's too late. So that's something that's really big.
And I think one thing that's interesting in this is that sometimes you hear about technology displacing experts. And in fact, all the expert hepatologists we've spoken with are super excited about this solution because it enables them to see the patients that need care the most. The routine screening becomes much more routine, can be handled much easier, and they can spend their time on the patients that really need the extensive and the care and the deep dives.
Yeah, that really makes sense. What would you say is the biggest challenge bringing a product like this to market?
Anytime you bring a product to market, there's a number of challenges. I'll say one of the challenges for us, for any company that's R&D focused, is tying R&D to what users need, right? So we have I myself, my CEO, we focus very much on understanding what our customers, our clinicians, our patients want. Our R&D team is very much focused on, how do we get the results to show it in the way we want. And the real important thing is how do we integrate that across. And we do that by having a very open organization. There's just little small things we can do. We always have a North Star in the company. Right now, our North Star is passing the FDA 510K, so everyone's aligned on that goal. It's good to have regular roadmaps within your company so everyone understands where you're going. We also do a lot of cross-functional meetings in terms of like our weekly R&D update. The product team, the software team sits in on that. And then same thing when we do our weekly product updates, the R&D team sits on that. So it's a lot of cross-functional communication there. So that's moving from or delivering a R&D focused solution into a consumer-facing, consumer-focused solution is a challenge for most companies in this stage, but we believe we're navigating it well.
That sounds like it. I know that I hear that oftentimes that R&D and marketing don't work together, that R&D kind of sits in the background, they do their thing, and then they hand it off and say, you go at it. But it sounds like with the cross-functional work that you're doing, that Oncoustics is going to hit their stride by that, by being able to do that effectively.
We believe so, and that's why we think people are excited to use the solution. We have some customers who are actually waiting for us to get their FDA so they can start using this in a wide fashion.
Switching gears a little bit, I noticed that you've done some mentoring of folks that are in startups. Talk a little bit about that and some of your experiences, and what are some of the mistakes that you often see that folks do when they're in startups.
So one of the things I really like about Silicon Valley is that there is a lot of support for other innovation, both from a structural standpoint. Right there's a culture of accepting people who have failed. I've had a couple stumbles myself in my startup journey. But there's a lot of support to help people develop their skill set. So as part of that, I've had great mentors who have provided guidance to me. I try to give back as well, so I enjoy seeing how other people are innovating in new ways and provide some guidance based on my experience. I also just find that personally exciting. It helps me think of new ideas as well. So in terms of some of the challenges that startups go through, it's really trying to, maybe I'll focus on two things here. One is how to organize for the goal you're trying to deliver, right? Pick the goal that's really going to move the needle for you, for your customers, and then align your team around that, right? And build a team around that. So that's the first thing. Startups are usually led by visionaries who have 1,000 ideas at the same time, and it's narrowing down and focusing and building to that one thing. And then the second thing is, I think, an item that we've already mentioned a couple times. It's really turning that wheel from, hey, I am building a proof of concept that, I've got 10 buddies who love this solution. Okay, how do you make that into something that 1,000 people, 10,000 people love? So turning that, going from this idea of a concept into an idea of a scalable solution.
As a part of that, one of the things I'm interested in is how do you move from this innovative platform, and it's kind of embedded of what you're talking about, because with smaller companies, you move very fast. And as you grow larger, now all of a sudden you have to kind of meld into, there has to be a level of process. You can't just do things. My guess is, we always joke in some cases that you're building a plane and flying it at the same, at the same time. You get to a point where you can't do that anymore. How do you, in your experience, move from that fast, nimble, and keeping that speed and nimbleness, but beginning to grow into an organization that has a little bit more process behind it, because having that process helps you be more effective and do the things that you need to do to be successful?
Yeah, no, I think that's a great point in terms of scaling and how you go from 0 to 1 to 1 to 100 or 1,000. So I think you also hit a key point there that you want to maintain your agility and your speed. You don't want to go to this big company that then dramatically slows things down. Structurally, I think it's important to maybe separate those two items. Which are the teams that you need to continue to work fast? How do you give them the playground in which they can do that? And then how do you put a guardrail where you go from the fast part of the company to the company that needs to be more concerned around safety, right? And so like a very simple example of this is you want to let your R&D team build stuff and break things as much as they want, right? Throw crazy ideas out there, within budget, and see what works and see what doesn't, right? You don't want to put a lot of constraints on them, but at some point, then you want to take those great ideas and provide them to customers, right? Perhaps in life-saving situations. So it's very important that the guardrails are put around that. So if I look at a very simple decomposition, is that R&D you want to allow to be nimble, let them continue to do things. You want your product team, your commercialization team to have more to be more regimented. So there's safeguards in place. So there's strong documentation, that there's strong process control. So you make sure that things that are delivered to customers are done in a safe and effective way. Now, there's all kinds of pathways to that, right? There's obviously got to be an interface between the R&D team and the product team to make sure that those are done quickly and done well. And you also want to make sure that, hey, you know what? Your customers are interested in innovation. So there should also be a pipe where you can show some of your latest innovation and tell them, hey, this is not fully done yet, but here's some of the cool things we're doing. And you know what? When we show this to you, don't use it on a patient, right? You might see it break, but we're trying to show you some of the cool things that we're developing. And I think, having both those mindsets is important. And you also have to make sure that you arrange your team in that way so that, that there are people in leadership roles who understand both of those mindsets. And then that, the people also understand which group they're in. So that the people who know that they can go and break things have that freedom. The people that know that they shouldn't break things understand that that we're working towards customer safety eventually, right? So there's some guardrails that need to be put in place for that.
Yeah, guardrails make sense. That's always a big word in pharma: guardrails and compliance and regulatory, and how do you play within the rules, but also be able to be innovative. Let me ask you this question, Shahid. If you were giving advice to a new startup, a new owner that was trying to do something special, based on some of the things that you've learned, the mistakes that you made, what would be the biggest piece of advice that you would give them?
So, as you've mentioned, I've done some startup advising. I've also been part of the Lean Launchpad program at UCSF, where we guide particularly R&D scientists, PhDs through this program. Okay, you've got a great idea. How do you make it into a solution? So at least the paradigm that I strongly believe in is focus on the customer first, right? So as cool as your solution is, understand who might use this and go out and speak with them. Speak with not just one person, but in the UCSF program, we recommended people speak to over 100 people, and people would always roll their eyes like 100 phone calls, but that's really what you should do, right? If you expect someone to invest millions of dollars into your solution, you should go out and speak to hundreds of people to back this up. And I think through that process, people understand a lot more about not just what is the need, but also how it should get delivered. So that's the one of the core things is really focus on customers. The other is a point I think we've hit on a few times now is really having that mindset going from 0 to 1, right? So I'm very focused on building the solution. I want to show that it works to a number of people, including potential investors and potential customers. But then how do you take that proof of concept, and even from a company structure? I've got like one a marketing person. How do I grow that to something that can then hit thousands of customers, hundreds of thousands of customers, perhaps?
That makes perfect sense. One question I haven't asked that comes up oftentimes in startups is around raising capital. Have you found that to be a challenge? What's been your experience?
So there's a saying that you're always raising as a startup leader, and it's actually the truth. We're always in a funding cycle, always looking for good investors to come in. I think one of the things that's important is you pick investors who are aligned with your goals, understand your roadmap. So smart money is better than just just plain money. It's been especially challenging in the last few years, also in the health tech space. I will note that at JPM this year, there's been a lot more excitement around investment. Some of the checks seem to be opening up. So you do have to have an eye towards what's going on in a macro sense. I guess is in terms of advice for new founders is get out there. Don't be afraid of rejection. I've been rejected maybe 100 times, quite possibly 100 times. Through that you learn more. You learn how to refine what things people are looking for. And I'll say, through some of those rejections, we actually refined what our market approach was, what our product approach was. So these are all learning experiences. They're obviously disappointing, but through that you come out and you're able to do things. So. I think have some perseverance is the other piece of advice I'd give.
Yeah, it sounds like it. I hear people oftentimes talk about their pitch decks and what you should do and what you shouldn't do, and some of it's in the eye of the beholder. There's always a little bit of trial and error when it comes to those type of things.
Yeah, it's one of my favorite expressions is startups are a contact sport. So you have to get out there with your solution, with your pitch deck, with your team building, and see that it works. It's not something you can just sit behind a computer and build.
Makes perfect sense. Shahid, is there anything that I haven't asked you that I should ask?
Anything that, let me think, is there anything that, maybe one last thing that might be of interest to your viewers is how to approach AI, right? So there's a lot of AI-based things out there. So AI is fundamental to what we do. Our model is trained. The way we get this device that's thousands of dollars to be as strong as a device that's millions of dollars is by using the power of the large field of AI, deep learning in our case. From an external perspective, I think, particularly depending on the application you're going to, in our case, it's going to be the healthcare field. You want to make the AI as transparent as possible, right? So this shouldn't be some complicated interface that a clinician has to interpret, right? You want it to be familiar to them. The AI should actually be invisible for most clinicians, right? You should not hide the fact that it's AI based. But the AI itself should present something that's clean and easy to use. And then it's really important for us as a company that's working with AI is to make sure that it's robust, so that it's robust across demographics, across region, and it's usable globally. I think those are really important things. Ethical AI is talked about a lot in many different ways, but the way that I'll use that term right now is to make sure that it's applicable and usable in the healthcare space across the entire population of the world, right? Or maybe if you're just selling into the U.S., you can say just the U.S., but our footprint is global, so our goal is to service the customers globally. The other aspect I will say in terms of building an AI-based solution, more from the operational standpoint, is that any founder that's going into this space should understand that there's a lot of scale work that has to happen to actually get AI into this state that I talked about, so that you can run all these models, that you can make sure that it works for everyone, that it provides the results you want. And I think there was a phase which we were, saw a number of our cohort companies run out of money because they spent so much on training their models as opposed to figuring out how to do that in an efficient way. So yes, you can go out and buy $1 million of compute from Google today if you wanted to, but that might not be the right thing for you to do, right, in terms of your company strategy. So it's figuring out how do you use your AI and your AI development effectively to meet your eventual customer goals.
Yeah, those are some good thoughts. I know that one of the challenges, and I know everybody will have on their mind with AI, and there's, I guess, pros and cons to it. People will have access to a lot more data and information. So on one hand, it gives you access so you're able to connect the dots. The other part of it is access to your data that you may not want people to have access to. So I know that that'll continue to be a conversation as AI continues to proliferate.
Yeah, no, the security, the control of data is super important. I guess maybe just another point I will build into our solution is that we don't take any personal identifying information. So we get information on by client ID, by an ID. The
Okay.
clinician themselves, of course, know what patient this refers to, but we don't know who that is. We just know that here's a data set. What do you think of this data set? Do you think they're healthy or unhealthy? I have no idea whether that's you or someone else down the street.
Okay. Well, that's good. So so you're able to have access to the data, but you don't know who the people are. So
Correct.
that's comforting, because you can look and say, here's the argument for using this device because we were able to detect disease earlier, but at the same time, people are protected because you don't necessarily want everybody to know that you have a certain disease and those type of things.
Exactly, Keith. Maybe we should have you on our marketing team.
Well, Shahid, I appreciate the time. Thank you for joining Inside Pharma Leadership.
It's been my pleasure. Thank you.
Where can we find you?
I am, the company is Oncoustics.com. You can, I think the best way to reach me personally is through LinkedIn. I'm Shahid Rashid SF, I believe is my LinkedIn tag.
All right, Shahid. Thank you so much. Really appreciate you joining Inside Pharma Leadership.
Thank you.